The following program is brought to you with the generous support from viewers like you. Please visit our nonprofit at lions-den.org and make a donation to keep this show going. All right, enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the Lion's Den with Daniel Lobell. Hey, I'm Daniel Lobell. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever posted your political views on Facebook? Did you speak your mind? Did you reveal your opinions? Did you ever dare to question the mainstream narrative? If you did, you probably got a lot of pushback. Family members may have taken you out of their wills. Perhaps your own kids changed their names and skipped town. But who are we kidding? You probably didn't post, and you're smart not to. Who wants to be called an idiot or a racist, unfriended, fired from their job, canceled? Folks, I posted my opinions on Facebook, and I barely survived to tell you the tale. One night, I even went so far as to post up a meme that called into question Senator Kamala Harris's stance on late-term abortion. You can't do that. It was a dark and stormy night, mates. The waves came crashing down on me in the form of that creepy kid from high school that I didn't even know that I was Facebook friends with until he started calling me a fascist. It's a little hard to take him seriously, in all honesty, though, because all he does is post up memes of the Despicable Me minions. I looked at his wall, but people were mad. Like this guy who told me, "You are a dishonest person. This is very disappointing." Or this lovely person who said, "Wow, it was nice knowing you. Yikes." I also even learned that I don't exist. Daniel Lobell, Russian bot? I am Russian bot living in America. In Russia, robot completely censored. Robot not allowed to think for themselves, only can post ideas from political ruling establishment. But here in America, same exact thing. What a country! You could say that just like the biblical Daniel, I stepped into the lion's den, and look, I'm still here, I think. And now, I've created this show. Why? Well, I'm hoping to bring back some civil discourse, my favorite kind of discourse, and maybe debate some points of view. Remember debate? Because in today's cancel culture and tense political environment, I think we need to start hearing each other out. On our first episode, we're going to be discussing anti-Semitism, arguably the worst kind of Semitism. Anti-Semitism around the world seems to be really brewing these days, or shall we say, Hebrewing? I mean, you've got anti-Semitic caricatures like you see on 4chan. Do I look like that guy? Don't tell me if I do. Hateful rhetoric from Ilhan Omar, the white nationalist marches, the swastikas being painted on Jewish graves worldwide, or simply some random guy's garage. Ignorance from Nick Cannon and Ice Cube. The Jews in Brooklyn being run over by cars. The Tree of Life and Chabad of Poway shootings. The killings at a New Jersey kosher supermarket. Jews in France being murdered. And the sad slaying of great-grandfather Joseph Newman one Hanukkah night. Now people on the left and on the right are blaming the Jews for the coronavirus. But everyone seems to have forgotten where the virus actually came from. It came from China. That's right. In a matter of no time, it seems like the Jews are the culprits for the Chinese virus. If the Jews did spread corona, it's only because we picked it up in all those Chinese restaurants we frequent. People don't blame China because the food is too good, let's face it. Even if it does lead to a worldwide pandemic, what can we do? We can't boycott Chinese restaurants. We tried. It lasted for like 2 weeks. Then we're like, you know what? We'll take our chances. Everybody loves mugugai pan. Mugugai pan! Delicious. If only more people loved gefilte fish and schmaltz herring, perhaps the Jews wouldn't be in such a pickle. Then again, people do love pickles, so we got that going for us. The sad thing is that no one really cares about anti-Semitism except for the Jews. Just this past June in Nevada, an anti-Semite yelling Heil Hitler stabbed a Jewish man in the head. I mean, that story got reported in so few papers, even the guy who it happened to didn't know about it. But people should care. There were more than 2,100 acts of anti-Semitism in the U.S. in 2019. In the world, there were probably more. We just couldn't find that statistic. The media focuses on white supremacists. You know, the angry white guys like this. They're saying, the Jews will not replace us. They're so weak they wear flip-flops and carry tiki torches. Anyone could replace them. In fact, I think what's actually going to replace them is a tiki torch stand. Like this one. Those guys aren't dressed for Jew hatred, they're dressed for a luau. The new anti-Semites are the ones that I'm worried about. You know, the people who've been really jonesing for it, but they've had to find sneaky workarounds. That's where BDS and the anti-Israel stuff comes in. It's the new woke way to hate Jews. You get to be anti-racist and anti-Semitic at the same time. Why don't we also throw in anti-logical, because it makes absolutely no sense. You hate the only country in the world that's Jewish. Yep. And you hope to destroy their economy? Uh-huh. And you want to ruin their lives? You betcha. And you want white people to make hummus? Mm-hmm. That's it, you've gone too far. How is that not anti-Semitic? And this is where their sneaky part comes in. Because they have made a rule where it's okay for you to hate Jews over there. You just can't say that you hate Jews over here. Huh? So why now? Why is anti-Semitism on the rise? Some people are blaming the left. Other people are blaming the right. Some people even blame the Jews themselves. Classic move. As you can see, anti-Semitism is coming from everywhere. Here, there, and everywhere. To dive deeper into this, I'm joined by Dov Hikind, former New York Assemblyman representing Brooklyn's Assembly District 48. Shout out 48! And current human being fighting anti-Semitism, who has founded the Americans Against Anti-Semitism organization. And because today's topic is anti-Semitism, I thought let's just jump right into it. You're the head of the AAA, not the one that's getting me discounts at Best Westerns, but perhaps a more important one. What do you guys do at that organization?
Well, basically, just to point out, after being in the New York State legislature for 36 years, representing communities in Brooklyn, when I left office to do other things, I never expected that what I would be doing is being involved in this battle, in this war against anti-Semitism. You know, I had other plans. This was not my plan. And we established this organization, but we had a period, if you go back before Corona, where living in New York, in the tri-state area, acts of anti-Semitism were happening every single day. People just being attacked because they were Jews, no other reason. And then you had the horrible things that happened in Jersey City, where people were actually murdered. Jews were murdered. You had Muncie, New York on Hanukkah, where Jews were stabbed. Again, because they were Jews.
If you talk to people on the left, they say it's Donald Trump's fault. Now, for me, that takes a little bit of a mental gymnastics to come to, because first of all, these aren't Donald Trump supporters who are doing that. So that's right there a logical fallacy. And then second of all, it seems to me from watching the news that he's doing good things for Israel and doesn't seem to be someone who hates Jews.
Now, Donald Trump can do better. There's no question about that.
Right.
But to blame him, to accuse him, I mean, the most ridiculous thing, honest, to accuse him of being an anti-Semite is so ridiculous and so preposterous.
I'm with you on that. I don't see any evidence that he's anti-Semitic, but let me ask you.
I mean,
you say Donald,
just the opposite.
You say Donald Trump can do better. In what way do you feel he could do better?
Look, I think even you know, the recent debate about you know, look, he can just be more vociferous and a little stronger in speaking out. But at the end of the day, he is not the one responsible for anti-Semitism in this country.
So who is?
He is not, well, listen, who's responsible for hating Jews throughout history? I mean, my family in 1944 in Czechoslovakia, my mother, her mother, other members of the family, nephews, nieces, you know, living peacefully, having good relations with their neighbors, were rounded up one day.
I'm with you that there's always been, if you will, systemic anti-Semitism out there. But in this particular case, who are Czechoslovakians / Germans or Austrians? Who is fueling this anti-Semitism that we've seen rise in America?
Look, that's a very good question. You have the Farrakhan's of the world. In recent times, I mean, in the past year, 2 years, you've had members of the United States Congress indulge in vile anti-Semitism. You have people like Linda Sarsour, who's become a star in the Democratic Party, who is a supporter of terrorists. Again, I repeat, supports, endorses, embraces terrorists. It's all there. It's not some secret that only I'm aware of. She is someone who has indulged in anti-Semitism clearly. Everybody knows. And in spite of that, she's part of the Democratic Party. She spoke at the Democratic Convention at one of their meetings. I mean, how does that happen?
I, by the way, have been a lifelong Democrat of a Democratic family, but I've never given two thoughts about politics until politics started invading my world being the world of Judaism and the world of comedy.
As a Democrat, I always did what I thought was right. I've always been a rebel. I've supported more Republicans over the years. I look at people. I don't look at labels. That's been my story from the very, very beginning. I was holding public hearings on affirmative action in 1985 that were shut down by the leaders of the New York State Assembly because they didn't like, they didn't like what I was doing in trying to deal with this, holding public hearings, which we did. The question of anti-Semitism, I mean, that's a question, as you know, you could fill your walls with, why does someone hate me? Why did someone put my grandparents in a gas chamber? Because they were Jews. But what did they do to anybody? The people that put them in the gas chamber, what did they do to anybody? Did they hurt somebody? Look, you have, nothing has changed, as you know. The Jews still control the banks. The Jews still control the media.
Right.
The Jews have all the power, et cetera, et cetera.
And yet it never trickles down to me.
It's the same things throughout history. It's the so-called decent people, the nice people, the Balabatisha people, the respectable people within the Democratic Party who permit this, who have two standards. Look, when Omar indulged in the Benjamins and due loyalty, you remember very well.
Of course.
Vile hatred of the Jewish people. It was horrible. Classical anti-Semitism. They couldn't pass a resolution in the Congress, the Democrats I'm talking about.
I know.
Nancy Pelosi could not pass a resolution condemning her anti-Semitism. At the end of the day, you know what they did? They condemned everything.
Right. I wrote an article about this, how it became an all lives matter
that's
bill.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem. I remember a year ago where people said to me, forget about Farrakhan, because we spoke out about Farrakhan always. And people said to me, he's an old guy, forget it, nobody cares, nobody's interested. But you know that is not true.
Of course.
That there are so many people in the Democratic Party, members of Congress, and others, entertainers in your field, who praise him, who think he's the best thing that ever happened. And they put their message out to millions of people.
Right.
30 years of hate directed against the Jewish people, directed against white people, directed against people who are gay, and he still manages to survive with prominent Democrats thinking he's a great guy. It's the old story. We don't agree with the anti-Semitism, but he does a lot of good stuff. Sounds familiar?
Well, he's got snappy glasses. I like those gold rims, but other than that, I don't see much redeemable. But I look at organizations like the ADL and I think, what do they do? What are they doing? Like, I'm here, I feel vulnerable, I'm Jewish, I'm scared in my own neighborhood. And I get mad at the ADL. And I say to myself, like, haven't I donated money to them? And the answer is no. Oh. But I have made a donation, I believe. But the point is that I know my family have donated lots of money to them over the years. And what are they doing with it? Why are they not fighting anti-Semitism? What does anti-Semitism, and this is a good question specifically, I hope it's a good question specifically for you because you have an anti-Semitism organization. What do anti-Semitism organizations do to stop anti-Semitism?
Well, we could talk about the ADL for a moment since you mentioned it. The ADL is not the same organization that it was years ago. They almost work for the Democratic Party if you look at the things they've done and the things they've not done over a period of time. Even with the Goebbels remark from Vice President Biden, we didn't hear from the ADL. We hear from them very often, especially anything that happens on the right. In fact, they're the ones who push the the theory that it's all from the right, not from the left. So they are a real serious problem. As far as our organization, we've been around for a year, and we're not afraid to speak out and call out people. By the way, Democrats, Republicans, I confronted Tlaib at Rutgers University not so long ago. She got up to speak at a function with 600 Muslims. She had just blamed Jews in Israel for killing a child. It turned out to be that child had died, slipped into water and drowned, but she blamed the Jews for that. It was a horrible, horrible thing. Put out that message to millions of followers. I went to this function at Rutgers University. When she got up to speak, you can watch the video, you can see it. I confronted her when she started speaking and demanded that she apologize to the Jewish community and to the American people for literally blaming the Jews for killing a child, for murdering a child. It was totally not true.
How'd that go?
And then was escorted out by the police. So we have been there to stand up to Farrakhan. Look, even Fox, and I appear on Fox very, very often, but one of their Fox affiliates, Fox something, was going to have Farrakhan on one of their things on July 4th, just recently. We were the first group to come out and say, how in God's name can that happen? And thank God Fox canceled that with Farrakhan. Education is a critical part. By the way, not just education for the public in general. Our own people need to be educated. Our young people need to be educated.
Absolutely, yeah. Education within the Jewish community would be, I think if you saw that thing that happened with Seth Rogen, I think that's a good example of how far people's perception of what it means to be Jewish has drifted away. And I don't blame Seth Rogen for that. I think he could have done better. I don't know him, but I think the problem, again, is a larger one that people... I was lucky enough to get a Jewish education, but he didn't. Not in the way that I did. Not in the way that you did. So that is a big deal. I think how do we reach out to Jews who are not basically filled in on what it means to be Jewish?
Well, I can tell you that our organization, one of the things I started doing before the pandemic, I was going to school after school, high school students, 12th graders who were going to universities the following year all over the country to talk to them, to speak to them, to turn them on, to get them to be involved. There are many things that can be done if one wants to do. And it's got to be things that are concrete. And again, we can't play this political game to be politically correct. We in our organization, we're strong, we're proud of who we are, and we're not afraid to speak out about anything. I am ashamed and embarrassed by what has happened with the Democratic Party.
Okay, so you're talking to somebody who's hanging on by a thread. So why are you still there? Why are you still hanging in?
Well, I'm hanging on the same way you are. You pointed out before, most Jews have a disease. They think they have to vote for the Democratic Party, even if it's against their interests, for God's sake. So it is much more effective for me.
I don't think I use the word disease, but that's a much...
Well, I call it a disease because it seems to be a disease. By the way,
Right.
one way to help the Democratic Party is to make sure that Donald Trump gets reelected.
I don't think there's too many people who are saying that. Go on. Why do you say that?
If you know what I think that will be an incredible message.
Mm-hmm.
If Donald Trump gets reelected again, and I hope he does.
I've had this
Not
thought,
that
but
I'm
I don't think it's gonna. I've had this thought where it's like, I'm so mad at them on some level that I almost want to punish them by giving them what they don't want, so that they wake up and say, okay, we're doing wrong. Let's reform our wicked ways. But it hadn't happened in the last election. I think they just doubled down. So what makes you think it would happen if he got reelected?
Well, look. I don't know what's going to happen. We just watched the debate, and we watched the president. We know how he behaved. But then I look at Biden. I mean, there was no life there, for God's sake.
I
He is
wouldn't
going
go
to
that
run.
far. I wouldn't say there was.
I
I
mean,
thought.
that's what I thought. He's going to run this country. Are you kidding me? I
Listen,
mean,
I'm
give
not.
me a freaking break. I mean, who's going to run this country? Bernie Sanders and the rest of that group. AOC, Talib, Omar. They are going to play a major role in this country. I got to tell you, if Biden wins, it will be disastrous, I think. Disastrous for this country. More difficult for Israel, unquestionably. By the way, on that note, Donald Trump has been the best friend of the state of Israel ever. And it's not even, I mean, nobody comes in second. Who comes in second? On that, he has been absolutely perfect.
I think I come in second.
Okay, I'll accept that. You're second.
If you're not going to point to second place, I'll take it.
I might decide to vote for you after this
Vote for
interview.
me.
I might do that. I don't think anyone will argue that the radical left will play an important role in the Biden administration. So I don't think anyone will argue that they will, and they deserve to, by the way.
By the
They
way, I don't
deserve
like
to.
the term radical left. When you hear about the radical left, you think, hey man, I want to be part of the radical left. It's not really a radical left, right? It's an intolerant left. So,
Oh, okay.
And it's a bit of an
I like that
oppressive,
too.
an
How
oppressive
about
left.
a radical, intolerant left?
Now, I do consider myself a liberal, but I don't consider myself an intolerant left. And I think that's an important distinction. I think there's a lot of people out there like me who feel this way, and we don't subscribe to the liberal orthodoxy of today. I already subscribe to the Jewish orthodoxy. You can't have that many orthodoxies going at one time. You get overwhelmed. But I think a lot of people, like myself, sort of feel like we're homeless, politically homeless. Like we don't have a place necessarily because we were Democrats and we are liberal. Here's the thing that I don't hear people say. It is the alt-left.
The alt-left. I think that's exactly what we should refer. If we're going to call something alt-right, we should
Language
call something
is important.
alt-left.
I mean, we in comedy know that for sure. The way you want to talk about labeling, the way you label things is how people perceive it. If you call it radical, people are into that. I grew up with the Ninja Turtles. Radical,
Right.
man, it's not something you want to shy away from. But alt sounds bad. Oppressive sounds bad, and that's what those things are. When you have people like Linda Sarsour who are promoting terrorism, and people like me who are Jewish and we're liberal, and we see this and we're like, what the heck is going on here? Have we been forgotten? Have we been totally ignored?
You and I should be partners. We should work together. We should do things together, because as long as we respect each other, in spite of whatever differences, and I don't know what those differences are, but just listening to you, like, hey, this guy's cool. Hey, we should be working together.
I
We
agree.
should be doing
I'm
things
pretty
together.
cool.
Yeah, you're a cool guy and funny.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you being on the show. I will wrap it up with this final question. I read that you grew up Hasidic, and as far
Oh
as
my
I can
God.
tell, you're not right now. So what happened?
So I ended up studying at two very Hasidic yeshivas as a kid living in Williamsburg, Vishnitz and Bells. Again, these are two major groups. So,
It'd be good if there was a whistles Hasidim too.
by the way,
bells
it
and
was
whistles.
I got to tell you, it was my mother who fought my father
Uh-huh.
to get me into a school to study, to have a better secular education. And I ended up going to a school called Torah Vidas, which was like going to Harvard for yeshivas. So I lived that life. I grew up in that community. I understand that community. I speak Yiddish fluently.
I'm sorry to interrupt
Yeah.
you. They say the same thing in Harvard when they're trying to sell it to people. They say we're like the Torah Vidas of
Right.
colleges.
But I represented almost every Hasidic Jewish group in the world. And I would go to these rabbis, exactly the way I am. And, not all of them are, they're not Zionists, to say the least, as you might know. And, I'm a person, I do what I think is right. I'm a proud Jew. I love the state of Israel. It means everything to me. And candidates who support Israel, who support the relationship of Israel and America, to me, that is one of the most important issues. I can't agree with you on all the issues. If I disagree with you, you're not a friend of Israel. I would never support someone like that. So, this is, my philosophy and my way. I am a proud proud Jew and a proud American.
So that's beautiful, but was that the major disconnect between you and the Hasidic community was over Zionism?
No, no, we had our differences, but I had a great religion. Remember, I got elected 18 times in that community, 18 elections. And one of the reasons I was successful, I believe, was because I was there for people. That was all the public stuff, television, interviews, all the issues, but being there for people day in and day out and helping people is what makes all the difference in politics. And that's something I learned from day one and never forgot it till the very last moment after 36 years, making a difference in people's lives.
And are your family still fishnet Hasidim? I don't think that's how you say it.
Some of my family are close to Vishnitz,
Uh-huh.
but when people say to me, "What kind of chassid are you? What are you?" I tell them I am a chassid of the Jewish people.
All right. Well, it's nice having a chassid of the Jewish people on this show. Thank you so much
Hey,
for your
listen,
time, guys.
you and I are partners after this show.
I'm always looking for a gig. Hit me up.
You got it.
Whew. I mean, that guy really doesn't like anti-Semitism. Seems like a great guy. And who knows, maybe I'll get a gig out of it. Next up, I'm going to talk to Professor Holly Levitsky, the Director of Jewish Studies at Loyola Marymount University here in sunny Los Angeles, California.
Thank you, Daniel. It's a real pleasure being here. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. And I'm so excited to talk to you because I know you have such a wealth of knowledge on our topic for today, which is anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, that topic is one that I think we all know quite a bit about. And I understand that you created an entire department at the college where you work, and it's not a Jewish college. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. It's a Jesuit university. Just in the last few years have we had our first lay president. So it was run, as a Catholic university, and still is a university, what they call in the Catholic tradition. Nonetheless, it's a small liberal arts college and had no Jewish studies program until about 12 years ago, when after years of feeling like I was kind of a lone Jew, certainly the only Jew in the English department, but even within the university, very few Jewish students and Jewish faculty, I started to teach some Jewish classes, Jewish literature, the Holocaust. And I realized that I could create it as a department and then pull courses in from all sorts of other departments. So although I was in English and I could create courses in Jewish literature, Holocaust literature, all sorts of things having to do with literature and culture, I could go to political science and invite or help a faculty member there who might be interested in Israel and the Middle East create a course on the politics of Israel, which in fact we do now have 2 political science courses on Israel.
So what inspired you to do this? You were teaching English at the time, correct?
Yeah. Well, there was actually, I have a very foundational moment, and it continues to be a foundational moment for my entire family. And that is in 2001, I won a Fulbright Award, and it's called a Distinguished Chair. And what
Those are the best kind of chairs, by the way.
Oh, this was the best chair because they flew me to Poland. They put us up for a year, my whole family.
That's distinguished. Yeah.
That was distinguished,
That's
exactly.
distinguished.
And, I mean, it was post-communist, but, it was a strange place. I mean, for a California Jewish American family from Los Angeles.
It's a shame you didn't do like a Hawaii studies or something. Then they could have shipped you off to Hawaii into like the islands for a while. But I guess Poland will.
No. Trust me, faculty have looked at what I've done and asked to go all over the world. So
Wow.
as the Jews are often a light among the nations, and I taught at the University of Warsaw and grew to love Poland. I mean, what Ashkenazi Jew, doesn't have some love-hate relationship with Poland, right?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Well, I mean, I think I only have the hate part. Maybe I'd have to go there to gain the love. I had an interesting experience along those lines where I went back to Vienna with my grandma, who left right after the Anschluss, and she hadn't been back since she was 13 years old. We went back last year on a program where she was honored by Vienna, and I was sick to my stomach. I didn't want to ever go to one of these countries. I only knew them from all the movies and Holocaust education that I'd gotten over the years. I didn't want to go there. I'm like, that's where they get people like me. I don't want to go there. And when I got there, I was like, I was a little upset too because Vienna is so beautiful and the music and the parks, and I was like,
Yeah.
this was all taken from us. And in a way, because it was so beautiful, I was even angrier.
Yeah, there, but for the grace of God, we would have been, European citizens.
Mm.
But that said, let me just add that or emphasize that this is a Catholic university. So most of my students, once I lived in Poland for a year, I figured out what to do. I came back, started the Jewish
Mhm.
Studies program, and immediately, 2010, I organized my first study abroad trip to Poland. Um, I had, I think, like 22 students maybe, and 20 of them were not Jewish. So for you and I, this is a part of our history, Jewish history. But for the Christian student or non-Jewish students, this blows them away.
Yeah, it must
It
be
blows
having a
them
crazy
away.
impact on them. And have you seen minds change when you do this? Do they?
Oh, yeah, right in front of my face. And I have a lot of African American students come on my trips. I think every time I've gone every summer since 2010. So whatever that is now, 10 trips,
Mhm.
5 to Israel, 5 to Poland. And my African American students, and many of them choose the Jewish Studies minor, are probably the most troubled by it. Because I think for African American students in this country, especially, they really don't feel like anyone understands their history,
Mhm.
of slavery and oppression. And there's nothing like a concentration camp, let me tell you, to show you, someone's history of oppression. And so they're often very moved. I have some films. I often have film students who come on the trips. And so I have a whole archive of films by students of all sorts of backgrounds that explain exactly what you just asked, which is how did this trip transform me? And it does in powerful ways. I mean, just like with you, you probably never want to go back now, right? I mean,
No, I
you
do
did.
want to Vienna.
Yeah.
I do want to
You
go
want to go
back.
back? You would go back?
I would go back.
Yeah.
Is
What
it?
changed? What changed for you?
Well, it's beautiful. I want to take my wife for one thing. Um, it was a really powerful experience for me going around with my grandma, who had not been there, like I said, for like 80 something years. I don't know math, another one of my weak spots. But what, 80? I'm not going to try. But she.
Long
why, why make myself look stupid on purpose? But she hadn't been back in over 80 years. And she spoke German fluently. And she was excited to be back. I was like, what? I thought she was going to be the more emotional one. She was emotional, but in a different way than I had ever expected. And hearing the stories of, generations of my family that came before that lived in Vienna. So now I do want to go back. That,
time.
and because somebody said that there's some comedy bookings out there, and gig's a gig.
When I live there and when I go back, there's this thing called philo-Semitism.
I've
Um,
heard about this philo-Semitism. I never get any of it, but I want some. It's people who are just like obsessed now with Jews because there's a Jew shortage, right?
yeah, so in Poland, you get this sense that, for instance, on every street corner in many cities, but Warsaw is where I lived and where I spend the most time, there are these little wood carvings. And the wood carvings, it's one of the Polish arts is wood carving.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the carvings you'll find everywhere is of a rabbi. And the rabbi has a coin in his hand, or sometimes the coin is on his forehead. And Polish people buy it for good luck. They put it in their house for good luck. What does that mean to you? You analyze it. What does that mean?
Do you ask them? What does it mean to them?
Oh yeah, I've asked a lot. I want to know what you think.
Why a Jewish rabbi holding a coin would be good luck? Is it like a leprechaun, a Jewish leprechaun to them?
Might as well be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's like what we do. is what I'm saying with the Native Americans. Like, I remember when my daughter was born and I bought a little, wind dream catcher, to put over her crib.
You catch any good ones?
I hope, I mean, she's a, knock on wood, she's a successful writer. So, okay, maybe it worked. And maybe these poles are taking the rabbis and putting them, on their mantelpiece
Mm-hmm.
and wishing, health for their children and prosperity more likely. And what that really goes back to is that, stereotype of the Jew and money. And the Jew in this case, in the Polish case, is really just in the imagination, because there aren't really enough Jews to count in Poland. There are Jews there,
Mm-hmm.
not really enough to count much. And so most people don't run into Jews, don't have any interactions with Jews. All they see are these little remnants of Jews. And to them, they're symbolic. Just like the Catholics, they take the arms of the saint or the heads of the saint or the hearts of the saint, and they embalm them and they put them in churches and stuff.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, in Vienna, there's a famous one, St. Stephen's. On St. Stephen's Day, they take it out of St. Stephen's Cathedral, his
Mhm.
arm,
Yeah.
and they march it around the city.
It's his actual arm?
Yeah,
My God.
in Warsaw. In Warsaw, I lived down the street from a church that held Chopin's his heart in a, an urn.
Yeah.
Go see it if you wanted to, the
Yeah.
urn.
Wow. I don't know if I'd want to see that. Take a look at Chopin's heart in an urn. I don't know. It's a little creepy to me. But yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to say one more thing about philo-Semitism, because it's a weird thing.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, it's like, I don't care who likes the Jews. If they like the Jews, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
We'll take them. But, when you talk about anti-Semitism, for instance, there's evangelical Christians, are super pro-Israel.
Right.
They're more Zionist than Jewish Zionist, because for them it's part of their theology.
Right. I know a lot of Jews have an issue with that because their hope is that we all go back to Israel and then get blown up in an apocalypse, right?
Something like that.
I don't know what kind of love that is, but I guess we'll take it. I mean, things are so tough, take what we can get.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting, as you're saying this stuff, I'm thinking, is the only way to be loved as a Jew is if you have the society wipe out almost every one of you? Like, is that the only way to go? It seems like a very high price to pay for a little love. It's almost sad to me, in a way, to be loved in that way. It is sad to me. And on the reverse of that, I'm kind of wondering if when you go to Poland, you experience anti-Semitism there still, because I had people stay next door to me here in Los Angeles. They run an Airbnb, and the window faces out to my house, and they saw me wearing a yarmulke because I was going to the synagogue, and they put the speakers of their little computer up against the window and played Hitler march music, and they yelled "F you, Jew" out the window.
Oh my gosh.
And they were Polish. So
just happened?
It happened 2 years ago. Yeah.
That's terrible.
So I just wonder, is that somewhat typical still in Poland? Do you run into any of that when you're there?
I'm so sorry that happened to you.
Finally, I get an apology from somebody. It's not your fault, but I'll take it.
If you look at, I don't know, just about any of the campuses that are having issues, let's say, in anti-Semitism, and the issues are all over the place. But if a campus is having an issue in anti-Semitism right now, it is almost positively because of an anti-Zionist connection.
Mm-hmm. I see articles about Columbia University with this kind of thing all the time, where I'm almost afraid to even go on that campus at this point. And I used to run a magazine from the dorms there. Where do you see it going? Do you think this is going to get better at any point, or is it just going to escalate?
That is the $1 million question.
Do I get paid now, or?
See my people, all right? So there are groups coming and talking to high school students before they get to college to try to figure out how they can combat some of the, crap and misinformation that's coming in through different efforts, maybe through church, maybe through
I know
teachers,
the
maybe
Israel
through
group does some good things on that
things.
front.
Yeah. So there was a young woman, Hispanic woman, and a really bright woman. I knew about her. It's a very small school, so I'd heard about her leadership abilities. We have many service organizations and leadership organizations on our campus. That's kind of the mission there. And for the second year, we had a populated SJP group,
SJP stands for?
Students for Justice in Palestine.
Okay.
And she also decided to enroll in one of our Jewish studies courses. And I think this is because she was so smart. And she thought, well, SJP is primarily interested in denigrating Israel. Let me take a course on Israel and, let me see what these people are about. So she took one of our Jewish studies courses called The Zionist Idea. I named it.
I like the name.
Yeah, it just got changed last year to the Zionist Ideas.
Is that a
Because
big process when you got to change your name that dramatic? It is?
it's committees and paperwork and so during Israel Apartheid Week, what they do around campuses all over, at the very least the US, possibly elsewhere, is they put up a series of large panels like a wall alongside a walkway. And on this wall are scenes, horrible scenes, painted and plastered with pictures and of mostly Israeli IDF soldiers doing horrible things to all sorts of different people. Arabs. There's a clear binary. So this year the wall was going to be on our campus. I'd seen it at Cal State Long Beach down the road before, and I knew how horrible it was. I'd never looked at it close up. So one afternoon I went over. It was along the walkway from where the class buildings are to the library. It's a very popular walkway. And I started walking and looking and stopping in front of each panel. I stopped in front of the first panel, and what I saw was a divided panel. And on one side was a U.S. Officer, a border officer, beating, what looked like, Latin American people of various ages, just like beating them back. And on the other side was an IDF soldier beating, clearly marked Arabs back, beating them, and so they were mirroring each other. And as I'm looking at this, I look, and this young woman had walked up to me. She was out at the same place at the same time. We had met a few times, and she said, "Professor Levitsky, how are you? I'm just so disturbed by this. I'm just so disturbed. It's terrible what Israel does. It's terrible. How can you deal with this? So I said, well, let's walk through it together, and let me unpack some of the misinformation for you, and let's talk about what we see. Let's read these images together. So we did, and it was so crystal clear to her at the end that what was the propaganda and what was the reality, and how this visual scene had really dealt only in propagandistic issues, that the real nuanced issues that she was learning in this class were not dealt with at all. And so my feeling with her was that, okay, so the long story short is she went back to her class on the Zionist idea. She told her teacher what had happened. He had some chats with her, and before you knew it, she decided that she wanted to resign from the organization, which meant they did no more. After the wall came down, they did nothing else that term on campus.
It's really unbelievable how there's so much money and effort being put forward to silence information nowadays. It's to censor truth, and it's to censor, even if it's not true, it's information, and people should be able to decipher it. So certain information is acceptable and certain information is not acceptable. And, when you're a kid, they tell you knowledge is power, and they try to get you to study like that. You don't really believe it, but now, I mean, it's so crystal clear at this point in my life that it's like, this really is, these textbooks that seem boring are actually like the most powerful. So what you're doing is incredibly powerful and incredibly important.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us today, and we hope to have you back sometime.
Thanks, Daniel. It was a pleasure. Pleasure talking to you.
Yes, and you inspired me. I'm going to become a professor of Hawaiian studies after this.
Oh, you're going to have some nice study abroad trips.
That's the only reason I'm doing it. I'll see you in Maui. All right, bye.
Mahalo.
Thank you. Thank you again to Professor Holly Levitsky, and thank you again to Dove Heikind for doing the show today. If you guys like the show, please make sure you spread the word, hit the subscribe button, check out the link in the description below to donate to this show's sponsors, and share it all over your social media before they censor you. Thanks to our sponsor, the Israel Group. Have a good one, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. Until next time, bye for now. Please visit us at lions-den.org and make a donation to keep this show going.